Hey everyone! Today we're going to talk about route planning. And while this discussion is specifically geared to planning for the Nomad Overland Rally stages, the techniques and tools are the same for any journey. I'm going to break down the process into 3 separate videos, so you can pick and choose the information you need without having to watch all of them. Today's segment focuses on big picture planning. That's to say, determining where you actually want to go, in a general sense, and finding interesting waypoints that you can string together into an overall route. Then, in segment 2, we're going to take a look at building long-distance routes with realistic timing, waypoints, and stops. Finally, segment 3 is going to focus on finding and incorporating those off-road trails that you want to cover, as well as locating camp spots and paying attention to supplies and logistics while you're traveling in those remote areas. So let's get started with the big picture. Where do you want to go, and how are you going to get there? I always start my plan at the end, or the furthest point that I have to go for the specific trip. Let's use a recent example. This past summer, I decided to do a trip someplace I'd never been before, the Acadia National Park in Maine. With that destination in mind, I began to do some research. Now, I use multiple tools for trip planning, primarily Google Maps, Onyx Off-Road, and paper maps of various sorts. I start with Google Maps to develop an overall route, and then I'll move on to Onyx and paper maps to work out the more detailed routes for off-road segments and to find lesser known places just to go exploring. So let's jump right in. Here I am opening up Google Maps. To create a new map, simply go to Google Maps and click on the menu and choose your places. Then choose Maps. If you have a bunch of existing saved maps, they're going to show up here. And at the bottom of the list, you'll see a prompt to create map. Clicking on that brings you to a blank map. Alternately, you can choose one of your existing maps as a starting point. But for this example, let's keep going with the blank map. You can give your map a title here, and then you can start adding your waypoints. Your ultimate destination, in this case Acadia National Park, you're just going to type it in the search bar and Google will point you right to it. And then you just add it to your map. I like to customize the icons on my map and use color coding because when you have a long trip, it helps you with a visual overview of stuff. So let's use this tree icon for the parks. And let's make it green for nature. Next, let's put in our start location. In my case, that's Nesconset, New York. And I'm going to make this orange and use the home icon. I also like to keep my icons in rough order that I'm going to be actually traveling in the overview layer here, just because it makes it easier when we get deeper into the plan and we have a lot of these icons. Now, if we zoom out, we see the 2 terminus locations. Of course, if we just wanted to get from point A to point B, we'd use Google Directions, and it'll give us the most direct route between our locations. But in our case, we're actually going to build a 12-stage overland route with camping and off-road stops, and we're going to try to optimize the different types of public lands that we're using and get in some of the activities we need to get more points for the rally. So we're definitely not going to take this route. As much as possible, I prefer to create loop routes, so I get to explore more different areas during one trip. That's what we're going to do in this case. With just a general knowledge of the region, I know that Vermont and New Hampshire both have unmaintained public roads, known as Class 4 roads in Vermont and Class 6 roads in New Hampshire. While these roads are not maintained, any legally registered vehicle may travel on them. In other words, excellent candidates for overland exploration. I also know that the Cape Cod National Seashore in Massachusetts has an oversand vehicle area. So I'm going to look to build a route that's going to include those general locations. Just looking at the zoomed out Google map, I see the Green Mountain National Forest in Vermont and the White Mountain National Forest in New Hampshire. Those 2 areas look like promising potential locations. We'll be able to explore dirt roads and camp. So I'm going to add them to my overview map, along with the Cape Cod National Seashore. Now I'll just add these waypoints to the driving directions to create my loop. With this rough loop and some key general locations, I can now go online and do further research to look for specific locations and interesting waypoints and places to explore. And my first stop is going to be the Green Mountain National Forest. Clicking on the website link directly from my Google map, I can jump right to the camping link and get all the details. I note that there's dispersed camping as well as campground camping. And let's say I decide to stay at the Chittenden Brook campground. I can get all my info right here, including the fact that it is most suitable for tents and not too large, which will give me the type of experience I want. Away from crowds and big RVs, but with bathrooms. I can also click through to find nearby hiking trails. The Beaver Pond Trail looks like it would make for a nice walk after a long drive day. And here I can pull the exact coordinates of the campground and plug them into my Google map. And in fact, I see that it's already labeled on Google Maps, so I just need to add it to my map. Again, making it that same orange color that I used for home. I use this color for camp, lodging, restaurants, places to get supplies, etc. And I like to keep my colors consistent from map to map. But you do it however you want to. Now we can do the same thing for the White Mountain National Forest. Clicking on the waypoint, I bring up the information, and just like before, I can click directly on the link, go to the Forest Service webpage, the White Mountain National Forest. Then, going to camping, I see there's plenty of dispersed camping. But as I'm looking for at least minimal facilities, I'm going to look for the campground options. And just like before, I go to the campground information, and I'm going to choose the Covered Bridge campground. A quick scan of the info here gives me an interesting lead. The Kankamagus Scenic Byway. Scenic byways can often be really interesting slow road options for the paved routes. So I'm going to go see what's there. A Google search takes me to the official site, and I see there's a lot of info available. I'll go more deeply into this as I flesh out the plan, but for now, I'm just going to take a quick look. I see that they call out the Covered Bridge campground here. And it looks like it'll be a great photo stop too. Jumping back to the main Forest Service site, I'm going to pull the campground coordinates and plug them into my map. And again, I see it already exists on Google Maps, so I just need to add it in. Most major sites, parks, and campgrounds will already be on Google Maps. So if you don't have the coordinates, you can just search for them by name. But while I'm zoomed in here, I see some other things that might be interesting. Rocky Gorge Scenic Area. Sounds like it might be an awesome photo stop. Let's see what we can find out about it. You can see here the Forest Service Recreation Map, which has a whole slew of waypoints for hikes, scenic areas, camping, and more. So when I'm ready to go more in depth in my planning, I can find a lot of leads right here. Going back to my map, I'll just add in this hike for now. And again, I like to keep them in the relative order of travel. Continuing to block out the route, let's move on to the next main stop, which will be the Acadia National Park. I'm doing the same thing for this one. The link takes me to the National Park Service site. And again, I want to look at camping options. I'm going to choose the Schoodic Woods Campground, which is the smallest one. I can get all the information I need about the campground right here. And while they don't give me the coordinates, they do give me a physical address that I can use for my map. Plugging in the address, I see the campground and can add it to my map. Then, to complete the basic route plan, I'm going to the Cape Cod National Seashore. On their page, I don't see camping, but I do see lodging. So, I find out that there's no actual camping available in the park, but the Park Service provides links to campgrounds nearby. So let's see what's there. It looks like Wellfleet State Park is the closest option. Clicking through, we can get all the info we need. Here's our GPS coordinates. So let's add it to our map. Now I have all the main waypoints blocked out, and I can add them into the Google Directions layer. This will give me a more precise loop. Of course, I'll be adding more details once I drill down deeper, but even now I can make some quick adjustments to the automatic route that Google gives me. I know, for example, that I don't want to go via New York City. I'm going to take a ferry across the Long Island Sound from Port Jefferson, New York to Bridgeport, Connecticut. So I can manually adjust the route by simply pulling it here to reflect my preferences. We'll do a lot of that once we drill down further and add in Class 4 and Class 6 roads and other waypoints, but for now, let's stop here. We have enough to get a rough sense of distance and drive time, which we can get from this tab. It gives us the overall time and distance, 1,327 miles and roughly 24 or 25 hours. And if you scroll down, You can see the time and distance for each segment as well. Consider these rough estimates. It will always take you longer because you need to stop for gas, food, and bathroom breaks at a minimum. We'll talk more about realistically estimating travel times for long overland journeys in the next video, and I'll show you how I drill down to find and add details for off-road trails and other interesting stops as I go. But for now, you have the basic tools to start planning your Nomad Overland Rally routes as you prepare for the event. And for those of you who aren't already registered, you can sign up at nomadoverlandrallye.com. Just follow the link to register now and join us for an epic adventure.